The individual did walk into our Anchorage office in November. At that time, he clearly stated that he did not intend to harm anyone. However, his erratic behavior concerned FBI agents that were interviewing him. He was taken into custody by the local police and transported to a medical facility for a mental health evaluation. At that point, we closed our assessment. We are looking at all avenues. We have not ruled out terrorism, and we will be pursuing every angle to try to determine the motive behind this attack.
You've been listening there. The FBI confirming that the Fort Lauderdale shooter did come to them for help after he claimed he heard voices in his head telling him to fight for ISIS. Santiago was still able to board that flight with a gun in his checked bag.
So how was he able to fly with the gun in the first place, and should security procedures be altered at the airport? Here
with more is security expert and CEO of Violas Group International, Paul Violas. Thanks for being here. Good morning, Paul. How are you? So we'll just start brass tacks. What is the procedure? What is allowed? And did anything go awry in this process?
Well, he did what he was supposed to do according to TSA rules. I mean, he filled out the paperwork and he checked his firearm the way he's supposed to. We know that. The problem is that we're going to have to examine is that we know that Florida is one of the airports you're not allowed to have a firearm in the general terminal. There are those that you're allowed to. There you're not. So wherever he left from, did he leave from Alaska? Did he leave from Canada before he went on to Florida? Whoever was in charge of immigration and moving at that point, those are the ones we're going to need to talk to about how that firearm got on there.
So he came from Alaska, he came from Anchorage, and he landed in Minneapolis and then continued on to Fort Lauderdale. But when he's in Fort Lauderdale, what's the procedure then if he's not allowed to have that gun in the terminal? Does someone escort him out somehow? What does that look like?
It's a good question. I mean, think about what we can actually do about this. If, in fact, I mean, the realistic picture, Clayton, is that if, in fact, we were to change policy, what would we do? We'd create a staging area for those that are legally permitted to have a firearm in their checked baggage. And then we would staff it with TSA personnel. Now, something we talked about a while ago is, do we actually arm them now? Do we arm TSA? And if we do, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to train them? And so that creates a whole other issue. But let's say we do. And if we do, once they're checked, do we escort them off the property? And if so, how far? And if we did, and in this case right here, does that really prevent them from coming back on the property?
Stepping right back in.
Yeah, but
there's no question about it.
The area that he was in, right, where people were getting their luggage to leave the airport, that's a very soft target, right? I mean, you don't have to necessarily go through security to be in that area. You have people outside picking you up.
Right.
So that begs the question of, like, it's a slippery slope in terms of how much you can protect and how much security you can put in place in those areas.
You're absolutely correct, Robert. Think back to 9/11 when the incident took place, and I remember this. We backed up the perimeter to the outer perimeter of the airport, and we were screening vehicles, undercarriage searches, things like that. We did that for a while, but then we stopped. We realized that we said, we don't perceive the threat to be as blatant as it was, and two, we just can't afford this, right? So we pushed the perimeter in. To your point, if somebody, talk about a soft target, if somebody wants to bring a firearm on an airport property and do something like this, they just drive up to baggage claim.
Absolutely. I mean, in this process, he checked it legal, as you said, which is a locked firearm unloaded in checked baggage.
Right.
I've done it. It's a familiar procedure. They do it a lot. He just picked it up off the carousel. And, you know, spending time in airports, I spent a lot of time in airports, it's a much more heavily armed presence now.
No question.
In some ways, the procedures are what they are. You just have a deranged individual who decided to exploit a loophole.
Exactly. Pete, I think at the end of the day, forensically, when we look at this, and you know that, especially you with your military experience, how quick does it take for you to activate that firearm by putting that clip in there?
Right?
10 seconds.
Exactly. What really is going to happen here forensically is we're going to have to look at the mental health issue. And I know you and I have talked about this before, right? We're going to have to look at this. Somebody is going to be responsible, or a group of people are going to be responsible because of the fact that this guy didn't become this way overnight. It was an incremental change, and the mental health signs were the things that we should be concerned about, not the fact of just the firearm in the back.
And because of it, too many innocent lives were lost.
No question.
Well, good to see you this morning.
Always.
Thanks, Paul.
Good morning.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you.